We walk around with this very comforting, very persistent illusion about ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We tell ourselves that we are rational beings, especially, when the stakes are high.
Right.
When we're at work staring at a spreadsheet or deciding on a mortgage or hiring a new VP, we think we are operating like computers. We think, I have the data, I have the experience, I am analyzing the facts.
It's what I call the professional pilot mode.
Yeah.
We assume that because we're in the cockpit, wearing the uniform, looking at all the dials,
Yeah.
we must be flying the plane correctly.
Exactly. But the reality is, so often, we are just wrestling with the controls while the plane does whatever it wants. And today, we are going to explore why that happens. We are diving into a book that is basically a sledgehammer to the ego of every smart person who has ever made a decision.
A fantastic book.
It's called You're About to Make a Terrible Mistake by Olivier Sibony.
And Sibony is, he's the perfect person to wield that sledgehammer. He spent 25 years at McKinsey advising the biggest CEOs on the planet.
So he's seen it all.
He has been in the room where it happened, and by it, I mean decisions that incinerated billions of dollars.
And we aren't talking about small errors here. We're not talking about ordering the wrong toner for the copier.
No, not at all.
We are talking about catastrophic, career-ending, company-destroying mistakes made by people who are, objectively brilliant.
That is the core paradox Sibony explores. Why do smart people do stupid things? And not just occasionally, but systematically.
To understand the scale of this, we have to start with a story that Sibony opens with. It is, and I'm not exaggerating, quite possibly the wildest corporate scam I have ever heard.
Oh, it's incredible.
It sounds like a movie script that would get rejected for being too unrealistic. We have to talk about the oil-sniffing planes.
Ah, the Elf Aquitaine affair. It is the absolute gold standard of cognitive failure.
So let's paint the picture for you. This is the late 1970s. We are in France.
And the world is in the grip of the oil crisis. Prices are through the roof, economies are stalling, and nations are panicked.
Right. And France is in a particularly tight spot because they don't have much domestic oil. They are entirely dependent on foreign powers.
The psychological climate is so crucial here. The French government is desperate for energy independence. They feel vulnerable. It's a pressure cooker.
Totally. And the CEO of Elf Aquitaine, this is the massive state-owned oil giant, is under immense pressure to find a miracle.
The whole country is looking to him.
Into this pressure cooker walk two men, Alain de Villegas and Aldo Bonasoli. Now, these aren't renowned geologists.
Not even close.
One is a Belgian count with a background in, well, let's just call it creative engineering.
A very generous term.
They managed to get a meeting with the top brass at Elf Aquitaine, and they pitch a machine.
And not just any machine. A gravity wave machine.
I mean, it sounds like Star Trek.
Yeah.
They claim they have invented a device that can be mounted on an airplane. They say you can fly this plane at high altitude over any terrain, desert, ocean, jungle, and this machine will sniff the gravity waves coming from oil deposits deep underground.
It's the holy grail of oil exploration. No expensive seismic testing. No drilling dry wells. Just fly over, look at a screen, and X marks the spot.
It would change the economics of the entire world overnight.
Instantly.
Now, if I walked into an oil company today and said I had a magic oil-sniffing flashlight, security would, escort me out.
You wouldn't get past the lobby.
But that's not what happened. The executives at ELF, who are PhDs, engineers, hardened business people, they listen. And they don't just listen, they get excited.
They get entranced.
Yeah.
And they start conducting tests. The inventors take them up in a plane. The machine is there, this mysterious box of electronics.
The black box.
The black box.
Yeah.
And as they fly over known oil fields, the machine starts beeping and flashing images on a screen. Look, oil! And the executives are seeing it with their own eyes.
They are seeing something.
They're seeing what they desperately want to see. The company becomes so obsessed with this that they bring in the French prime minister.
And it goes higher.
Oh, yeah. Eventually, the president of France, Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, signs off on it. He gives it the presidential seal of approval.
And they classify the technology as a state secret.
Right. Because they think, if this can see oil underground, maybe it can see, nuclear submarines underwater. Their imagination just runs wild.
They lock it down. They funnel money into this project, massive amounts of money. Over a few years, Elf Aquitaine spends the equivalent of nearly $1 billion in today's money.
$1 billion.
On a sniffing plane.
$1 billion. And here's the kicker. Without ever drilling a single hole to verify the data from the magic box.
And then, of course, the house of cards collapses.
Inevitably.
It turns out there were no gravity waves. The machine was a prop. When they were on those test flights, the inventor Bonasoli was sitting there with a remote control under the table,
Fighting it.
manually flashing pre-made images of oil deposits onto the screen whenever they flew over a specific spot.
It was a magic trick. It wasn't even a sophisticated hack. It was a remote control and a pre-recorded videotape, like something from a bad spy movie.
A billion-dollar magic trick. When the truth came out, it was a national humiliation. The CEO was fired, reputations were destroyed, the government looked like fools. But here is the question that haunts me, and it's the question Sibony asks. How? How does a room full of scientists and statesmen fall for a remote control?
It's so tempting to just say they were stupid, or that they were corrupt. But Sibony argues it's neither of those things.
So what is it?
They fell for it because they were human. They fell for it because of the storytelling trap.
The storytelling trap. This feels like the foundation of everything we're going to discuss today.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
We have this belief that we make decisions by looking at facts. Fact A plus fact B equals conclusion C. But that is not how the human brain works at all.
How does it work?
The brain is a pattern-matching machine. It's a story processor. We look for a narrative that makes sense of the world. And once we find a story that we like, especially one that solves a painful problem for us, we stop checking the facts, and we start checking if new information fits the story.
So in the case of Aquitaine, the story was French genius saves the nation.
Exactly. We are the underdogs. The world is against us. But thanks to this revolutionary secret technology that the Americans don't have, we will become an energy superpower. That story was so seductive, so delicious to the French ego that they didn't want to ruin it with skepticism.
So in a weird way, the intelligence of these people actually worked against them.
It absolutely did.
A less sophisticated person might have just said, I don't get it, this seems like magic. But a smart person invents complex reasons for why the gravity waves could work.
Precisely. Intelligence is often just a tool for rationalizing what your gut already wants to believe. And before you get smug and think, well, that was the 70s, we understand technology now, Sibony points out that this happens constantly.
All the time.
Look at the Terra Alliance scandal in 2004.
Oh, this is the modern oil sniffing story. It's unbelievable.
It's almost beat for beat the same story. A charismatic founder, this time a former NASA engineer, so he had the credentials,
He had the credibility.
claimed he could find oil using algorithms in surplus Russian fighter jets.
Fighter jets again. Why is it always jets?
Because jets are cool. They fit the narrative of disruption and high-tech speed. It's part of the story.
Okay, so who fell for it this time?
Not the French government. It was Goldman Sachs. It was Kleiner Perkins, the smartest venture capitalists in Silicon Valley.
The very top of the food chain.
They poured $500 million into a company that was basically vaporware because they were looking for a story. They wanted the Google of oil.
They weren't investing in the technology.
Yeah.
They were investing in the narrative arc.
Yes. We don't fact check, we story check. And this leads us directly into the first part of our deep dive, the traps. Sibony categorizes the different ways our brains betray us. And since we're already on stories, let's dig deeper into trap number 1, the storytelling trap, or what psychologists call confirmation bias.
We hear confirmation bias thrown around all the time. Oh, you just watch the news that agrees with you. But Sibony explains how this manifests in business in a way that is so much more subtle. It's not just about opinions, it's about how we process data.
Right. Let's move away from these billion-dollar scams and look at a typical Tuesday afternoon in the office. Sibony uses this great hypothetical about a sales director. Let's say that's you and your star salesperson, Wayne.
Okay, so I'm the sales director. My top guy, Wayne, calls me up. He sounds panicked.
He says, boss, we have a major problem. Our biggest competitor, Grizzly, is slashing their prices. They're undercutting us by 20%. They just poached 2 of our best guys. If we don't match their prices right now, we are going to lose a quarter.
Okay, that sounds like a legitimate crisis. Now, I consider myself a rational boss. I'm not just going to take Wayne's word for it. I'm going to check the facts.
Good. So what do?
I pick up the phone. I call another salesperson. Let's call her Schmidt.
And you ask Schmidt, hey, are you seeing aggressive pricing from Grizzly?
Right. And Schmidt says, oh yeah, boss. It's a bloodbath out here. I barely closed my last deal.
Okay, fact number 1 confirmed. Now what?
Now I call HR. Did we really lose 2 guys to Grizzly?
And HR checks the files.
They say yes. In their exit interviews, both mentioned Grizzly offered better compensation.
Fact number 2 confirmed. So you hang up the phone. You have 3 data points. Wayne said it, Schmidt confirmed it, HR confirmed it. The conclusion is obvious. There is a price war. We need to cut prices.
And I feel good about that decision. I feel like I did my due diligence. I didn't just panic.
And yet, you have just walked right into the storytelling trap. You haven't actually fact-checked the situation. You have only corroborated the story.
Wait, explain the difference. If I checked with other people, how is that not fact-checking?
Because you only asked questions that would confirm the hypothesis that Wayne gave you. We're in a price war. You asked Schmidt if she had seen price cuts. She remembered one difficult deal, so she said yes. But you didn't ask the disconfirming questions.
What should I have asked? What's a disconfirming question?
You should have asked. Schmidt, have we won any deals against Grizzly in the last month where price wasn't an issue? Schmidt might have said, oh yeah, I closed 3 deals last week at full price. That single piece of data completely destroys the price war story, but you didn't look for it because it didn't fit the narrative.
I see. And with HR, what was the mistake there?
You confirmed that 2 people left, but you didn't ask, is the turnover rate this month higher than the turnover rate last year for this quarter?
Right, maybe 2 people leaving is actually low for this time of year.
It could be. You took isolated facts and you strung them together to support the narrative that Wayne handed you. You weren't searching for the truth. You were searching for confirmation.
This is terrifying because it feels so rigorous in the moment. I feel like I'm being analytical, but I'm actually just a defense attorney for a verdict I've already reached in my head.
That is the perfect analogy. You are building a case, not investigating a crime. And this isn't just a business problem, it's a science problem. This is a huge driver of the replication crisis in psychology and medicine.
How so?
Researchers have a beautiful theory, a story, and they subconsciously nudge the data or throw out the outliers until the data fits the story they want to tell.
And Sibony mentions a study on forensics that really shook me. Fingerprint analysis. We think of that as purely objective. A match is a match, right?
You would hope so. But in this study, they took expert fingerprint examiners and gave them prints to analyze. Here's the catch. These were prints that these specific experts had actually analyzed years before and declared a match.
Okay, so it's a known match.
A known match to them. But this time, the researchers gave them a fake contextual story.
Like, the suspect has a solid alibi.
Exactly. Or the primary suspect confessed. And when they were told the suspect had an alibi, a significant percentage of these experts looked at the exact same prints they had previously matched and said, no match.
Wow.
The lines on the paper hadn't changed, the story in their head had changed, and it literally altered what their expert eyes were seeing.
If we can't trust our eyes to see lines on a page because of a story, how can we possibly trust our brains to evaluate a complex merger?
We can't, not without help. But before we get to the help, we have to look at the next trap. Because if we love stories, we really love stories about heroes. This brings us to track number 2, the imitation trap, often called the halo effect.
This is the Steve Jobs problem.
It is the Steve Jobs problem. In business, we are obsessed with best practices. We look at a successful company, we see what they do, and we say, if we do that, we will be successful too.
Which, on the surface, sounds logical. If I want to be a great basketball player, I should probably study how LeBron James shoots a free throw.
Sure. But should you also wear his exact brand of socks? Should you eat precisely what he eats for breakfast? Should you listen to the same pregame music?
Well, probably not. That seems irrelevant to his success.
But in business, we can't tell the difference between the shooting form and the socks. We assume that everything a successful company does is a driver of that success. The tragic textbook example Sibony uses is Ron Johnson and JCPenney.
Oh, this was a legendary train wreck. For those who don't remember, Ron Johnson was the golden boy of retail. He created the Apple Store.
And the Apple Store was a genuine miracle. It defied all conventional wisdom. It was clean, sparse, expensive, no sales, no clutter. It became the most profitable retail square footage in history.
A phenomenon.
So JCPenney, which is a dusty discount department store for, a very different demographic, hires Johnson to save them.
They bring him in as the Messiah.
And Johnson does exactly what you'd expect him to do. He applies the Apple playbook.
One for one.
He says, Apple doesn't do coupons, so JCPenney won't do coupons. Apple doesn't have cluttered racks, so we will clear out the inventory. We'll make it cool. We'll have a town square in the middle of the store.
He essentially tried to turn a store for bargain-hunting grandmothers into a boutique for tech hipsters.
And he was so confident because he had seen it work at Apple.
Mm.
He famously refused to test the new strategy. When the board asked about doing pilot programs in a few stores, he said, Steve Jobs didn't test.
That is the ultimate halo effect quote. A genius didn't do it, so I, also a genius, don't have to.
And what was the result? Sales collapsed. They lost 25% of their revenue in a year. The stock price was obliterated. Johnson was fired in 17 months.
So what was the fundamental mistake? I mean, besides the obvious arrogance.
The mistake was attribution error. Johnson and the board who hired him attributed Apple's success to the store design and the pricing strategy. They gave him the halo.
When in reality,
They completely ignored the fact that Apple had the iPod and the iPhone.
right, you could sell iPhones out of a damp cardboard box in an alleyway and people would still line up for blocks to buy them.
Exactly. The product was the genius. The store was just a nice wrapper. Johnson took the wrapper and put it around JCPenney's polyester shirts and was shocked when nobody lined up.
He imitated the visible behaviors of a genius company without understanding the invisible underlying context that made them work.
And you see this all the time. Companies copying Google's beanbag chairs and free lunches, thinking it will magically make them innovative.
Without Google's engineering culture.
Or copying Amazon's two-pizza rule for teams without having Amazon's intense data infrastructure and leadership principles. It's what anthropologists call a cargo cult. You build the wooden runway and pray the planes will land. They never do.
Now, Johnson was acting on his gut, right? He had an intuition that this was the right move.
Absolutely.
And this leads us to what might be the most controversial trap in the book. Trap number 3, the intuition trap.
This is the one that makes executives really angry. Because we are told constantly to trust our gut. We celebrate the leader who ignores the data and goes with their instinct.
And I have to push back here a little bit because is intuition really always bad? Sibony himself talks about the firefighter, the commander who screams everybody out right before the floor collapses. He didn't analyze data, he just knew.
Yes, that is the classic example from Gary Klein's research, and it's a great point. Sibony isn't saying intuition doesn't exist. He's saying its application is extremely limited. To understand this, we have to look at the scientific definition of intuition that Klein and Daniel Kahneman eventually agreed on. Intuition is recognition.
Recognition of what?
Recognition of a pattern that's stored in your memory from past experience. The firefighter had been in 1,000 fires. His brain, operating below the level of consciousness, processed the unusual heat rising, the strange sound of the flames, the lack of noise from the basement.
A collection of subtle cues.
Right. And it matched a pattern in his brain labeled floor is about to collapse, and it triggered an alarm. His gut was really just rapid pattern matching.
Okay, so if the firefighter can do it, why can't the CEO?
Because of the environment. Intuition only works in what they call a high-validity environment with rapid feedback.
Okay, those sound like academic terms. Break them down for us.
A high-validity environment is one where the rules are stable and the link between cause and effect is clear. Physics is stable. Fire behaves like fire. Chess is stable. The knight always moves in an L shape. If you do X, Y happens consistently.
Okay, that makes sense.
And rapid feedback means you find out if you were right or wrong almost immediately.
In chess, I move my piece, and I see instantly if it was a mistake because my opponent takes my queen. My brain learns.
Exactly. You get the reps. You get thousands of feedback loops. Now, let's look at strategic business decisions. Is business a high-validity environment?
Definitely not. The rules change every single day. Competitors change their strategy. New technology shifts the landscape. A pandemic happens.
It is the definition of a low-validity environment. It is noisy and chaotic. And the feedback loop is terrible. You make a strategic decision to acquire a company today. Do you know if it was a good decision tomorrow?
No, I might not know for 3, maybe 5 years.
And by the time you realize it was a disaster, your brain has forgotten exactly why you made the decision in the first place. You can't learn the pattern because the pattern doesn't reliably exist, or it takes far too long to reveal itself.
So when a CEO has a gut feeling about a merger, what is actually happening in their brain?
They are experiencing a false recognition. They're remembering a merger they did 10 years ago that succeeded, and they think, this feels like that one. But the context is totally different. The market is different. The company is different. They're matching a pattern that isn't really there.
Sibony uses the story of William Smithburg at Quaker Oats to hammer this home. This is the Snapple disaster.
It's just a tragic, perfect example. Smithburg was a hero at Quaker. He bought Gatorade when it was a small regional brand.
A gut call.
A total gut feeling that sports drinks were the future. And he was right. He turned Gatorade into a global empire. A huge win.
So he has proof? His gut works? He has the evidence.
That's what he thought. He felt invincible. So when Snapple, the quirky iced tea brand, came up for sale, He had the exact same feeling. I know beverages. I can feel it in my bones. This is the next Gatorade.
He was pattern matching.
He was, and he went all in. He bought Snapple for a massive premium $1.7 billion.
And
A catastrophe, an absolute catastrophe. He discovered the distribution channels were completely different. Gatorade was sold in supermarkets, Snapple in gas stations and delis. The corporate cultures clashed. The marketing that worked for Gatorade totally failed for Snapple.
how bad was it?
Quakers lost $1.4 billion of value in just 27 months. They had to sell Snapple for pennies on the dollar. It cost Smithburg his job and eventually cost Quaker its independence.
He confused luck, or at least a very specific situational success, with a universal skill he could apply anywhere.
Yes. So the rule is, if you are an anesthesiologist, trust your intuition. If you are a chess grandmaster, trust your intuition. If you are a CEO making a long-term strategic bet in a chaotic market, ignore your intuition. It is a liar.
That is very hard advice to swallow. But let's move to trap number 4. Overconfidence and inertia. This seems to explain why we take risks we shouldn't, and then why we stick with bad ideas for way too long.
The stat that just perfectly sums up overconfidence is this. 88% of drivers believe they are safer than the average driver.
Which is, of course, mathematically impossible unless average has a very strange definition.
And in business, this shows up as the planning fallacy. We are pathologically optimistic about our own plans. Think about the last time you renovated a kitchen or a bathroom.
Oh God, don't remind me. It'll take 2 weeks and cost $5,000. 6 months later, I'm washing dishes in the bathtub and I'm out $20,000.
That is the planning fallacy in a nutshell. We imagine the happy path, the scenario where no one gets sick, the materials arrive on time, and there is no dry rot behind the walls. We don't plan for friction and randomness.
And in corporate projects, this is why IT implementations are always over budget and late.
Every single time. And connected to this is competitor neglect. We make our plans as if we are the only ones playing the game.
Right.
We sit in a boardroom and say, we will launch this new product and we will capture 10% of the market. We completely forget that our competitors aren't just going to sit there and let us take it.
They're going to react.
They will lower prices, they will launch copycat products, they will run attack ads. Blockbuster looked at their business model and thought it was solid. They laughed at Netflix. They didn't account for the fact that Netflix would evolve or that the internet would get faster. They played a single-player game in a multiplayer world.
And then, once we're in these bad positions, we can't get out. That's the inertia part.
Right. The sunk cost fallacy. We have already spent $100 million on this drilling project. If we stop now, we wasted all that money. We have to keep going to make it worth it.
Even though the rational move is to stop throwing good money after bad.
And Sibony points out that this is baked right into how companies do their budgets. It's the anchoring effect. When a department makes their budget for 2026, do they start from zero and justify every dollar?
Never. They take the 2025 budget and they ask for 5% more. That's it.
Exactly. They're anchored to the past. This makes it almost impossible to radically reallocate resources from a dying division to a promising new one. Even if the market has shifted completely, the budget only shifts by 5%.
It creates these zombie projects that just keep getting funded year after year just because they were funded last year.
They just shamble on, eating up resources.
Okay, trap number 5, the final big one, groupthink. We've all been in that meeting. The boss says, I think this is a great idea, and suddenly everyone around the table becomes a bobblehead doll. Oh yes, brilliant idea, boss. It's just brilliant.
But it's not just fear, though. That's the important nuance that Sibony brings up. It's also rational adjustment.
What do you mean by that?
Imagine we're in a meeting with 5 other smart people. I pitch a risky idea. You look at it and you think, that looks dangerous. But then you look across the table at Sarah, the brilliant VP of Finance. She's nodding. You look at Mike, the chief engineer, a genius. He's nodding.
So I think, well, Sarah's smart, Mike is smart. If they think it's good, then I must be missing something. I don't want to look like the idiot who doesn't get it.
So you nod too. You rationally adjust your view to the perceived group consensus. But here is the horror. Sarah and Mike are looking at you. They're thinking, well, the host is smart and is nodding, so he must think it's a good idea.
It's a circle of people waiting for someone else to pull a fire alarm, and the building just burns down while we all smile politely at each other.
That is a perfect description of an information cascade. The first person to speak, especially if they're high status, sets the tone. Everyone else falls in line. And this leads to polarization.
Polarization.
Groups often make more extreme decisions than individuals would on their own. If we all kind of agree the product is good, we amp each other up. It's not just good, it's a world beater. By the end of the meeting, we are convinced we can't possibly fail.
And that's how you get the Bay of Pigs invasion, a room full of the best and the brightest convincing each other that a terrible plan is absolutely perfect.
Exactly. It's the classic case study.
Okay, so we have surveyed the battlefield. We have the storytelling track, imitation, intuition, overconfidence, and groupthink. It's honestly a miracle any good decisions get made at all.
It really is when you see it all laid out like that.
So the natural reaction, and I'm feeling it right now, is, okay, I see the traps. I get it. I'm smart. I'm going to be vigilant. From now on, I'm going to watch out for confirmation bias.
And this brings us to part 2, the diagnosis. And I have to be the bearer of some bad news. That strategy doesn't work.
Why not? If I know the pitfall is there, why can't I just walk around it?
Because of something called the bias blind spot. This is one of the cruelest jokes of human psychology. We are incredible at spotting biases in other people.
Oh, yeah. Easy.
I could look at you and say, oh, the host is totally falling for the sunk cost fallacy right now. It's obvious to me. But when I look at myself, I see a perfectly rational, objective thinker. My decisions are based on facts.
Right. I assume my reasons are valid. Your reasons are biased.
Correct. We cannot see our own mental errors in real time. It's like trying to see your own retina. You just can't do it. And even if you could, there is the fatigue problem.
What's that?
Biases are heuristics. They're mental shortcuts. They exist to save energy. If you had to rigorously analyze every single decision, which toothpaste should I buy? Which route should I drive to work? Is this email a threat? You would be exhausted by 9:00 a.m. You'd be paralyzed.
We need the shortcuts just to function in the world.
We absolutely do. 99% of the time, they are fine. But we can't selectively turn them off for the big, important decisions. And Sibony cites multiple studies on debiasing training.
Where companies try to teach this stuff.
Exactly. They spend millions teaching employees about these biases, and the data shows it helps them pass multiple choice tests about biases. But it has almost zero impact on their actual decision-making quality in the field.
So trying harder isn't the solution. Being smarter isn't the solution. This feels a little hopeless.
It's not hopeless, but we have to fundamentally change the approach. We have to stop trying to fix the person and start trying to fix the environment in which the person makes the decision.
This is the core of the book, part 3, the solution. Sibony calls it decision architecture.
I love this term. It's so powerful. Think about a courtroom. We don't trust a judge to just sit there, listen to the vibe of a case, and shout guilty. We don't trust their intuition.
No, we have a system.
We have built a massive, rigid architecture around them. Prosecution, defense, rules of evidence, jury selection, appeals.
The process is designed to force the truth to the surface, regardless of the personal biases of the individuals in the room.
Exactly. Or think about NASA. Astronauts are certified geniuses, but they don't wing it when they launch a rocket. They use checklists, they have mission control, they have go-no-go protocols. They rely on the architecture, not just their own brains.
So we need to build a mission control for our Monday morning meetings.
Yes. Sibony says we need to treat decision-making as a process that can be engineered for quality. He breaks this down into 3 pillars: dialogue, divergence, and dynamics.
Okay, let's build this house. Pillar 1, dialogue. This sounds simple, talk to each other, but I assume it's much more specific than that.
It's about structuring the conversation to kill the storytelling trap and confirmation bias. And the best tool for this, hands down, is the premortem.
I've heard of this, but I want to really dig into how it actually works in practice.
Okay, let's role play it. Imagine our team is launching a new coffee brand called Java Jolt. We are all excited. The standard meeting is, okay, team, what are some risks we see?
And I'd say something lame like, well, maybe the packaging will be delayed, or maybe our competitors will run some negative ads. Weak, polite stuff.
Right, it's safe. Now let's do a premortem. I am the leader. I say this. Okay, team, I want you to close your eyes. Imagine it is 2 years from now. It is February 2028. Java Jolt has been a total, unmitigated disaster. We lost millions. The brand is dead. I want each of you to take 5 minutes and silently write down the history of why it failed.
Okay, that feels different immediately. The framing is completely flipped. I'm not guessing if it failed. I'm starting from the premise that it has failed, and I'm explaining why.
Exactly. It uses a psychological trick called prospective hindsight. It's weird, but our brains are much better at explaining past events than predicting future ones. When you ask what might go wrong, your brain goes into prediction mode, which is naturally optimistic. When you say it has already failed, Your brain switches into explanation mode.
So in this scenario, suddenly I'm thinking, well, we failed because nobody actually wants high caffeine coffee anymore. The health trends all shifted to herbal tea and we missed it.
Boom. You just identified a massive market risk that you never would have brought up in the Happy Path meeting because it would sound too negative.
Or I might say, we failed because our single source supply chain from Colombia completely broke down during the political crisis, and we had no backup.
Now we have a list of specific lethal threats. And we can ask, can we mitigate these? Can we find a backup supplier? Can we hedge against the health trend? If the answer is no, maybe we shouldn't launch. The pre-mortem legitimizes dissent. It turns being negative into a creative, productive game where the person with the most creative disaster scenario wins.
It makes it safe to be the naysayer.
That's the key.
Hmm.
Another great tool for dialogue is the vanishing options test. This fights the trap of, should we do this deal, yes or no?
Which is how almost every decision is framed. It's a binary choice.
And research shows that binary yes-no decisions fail far more often than decisions between option A versus option B.
Yeah.
So if Sibony says, when you were stuck in a binary choice, the leader should say this, okay, team, imagine the option on the table is suddenly illegal. We cannot acquire this company. The regulators just forbade it. What would we do instead?
Oh, that's brilliant. It forces you to be creative.
Suddenly you say, well, if we can't buy them, maybe we could partner with a distributor in Europe to achieve the same goal. Or maybe we take that $100 million and invest it in our own R&D to build the product ourselves.
And often that forced alternative turns out to be a better, or at least a safer idea than the original one you were obsessed with. It breaks the tunnel vision.
That's right. Now let's move to pillar 2, divergence. This is all about breaking groupthink. It's about ensuring that the views in the room are actually different, not just echoes of the boss's opinion.
So how do you operationalize that? How do you force divergence?
One of my favorite techniques from the book is the Six Amigos.
Sounds like a Western movie.
It's a mechanism for big strategic decisions. You form a standing committee of, say, 6 people from completely different functions who have no stake in the decision being made.
So if the marketing team is proposing a huge new ad campaign, who is in the Six Amigos?
The head of engineering, the head of legal, someone from HR, the CFO, people who do not report to the head of marketing and will not get a bonus if the campaign launches.
And their job is to kill the idea.
No, their job is to stress test the story. The marketing team lives inside their own story. Customers love our brand. This will be huge. The engineer looks at it from the outside and says, wait, your own data here says customers are annoyed by our app's user interface. Why would a clever ad fix that fundamental problem? They ask the dumb questions that the experts are too close to the project to see.
It provides an institutional check and balance against the project team's confirmation bias.
Exactly. And another concept for divergence is the anti-portfolio. This comes from the venture capital world. Every VC firm loves to list their wins. We were early investors in Google. We backed Uber.
Their highlight reel.
Sibony says you should keep a public list of the ones you missed.
The ones that got away.
We looked at Airbnb and said no. We passed on Shopify. Keep that list visible. Analyze it as a team. Why did you say no? Were you too risk-averse? Did you rely on the wrong expert's opinion? It forces you to confront your own error patterns. It turns failure into useful data.
And speaking of data, we should touch on Bayes' theorem. Now, usually when people bring this up, listeners tune out because it sounds like a complicated math class. But Sibony applies it to meetings in a really practical way.
Yes. Forget the formula. The mindset is what's important. It's update your priors. In a typical meeting, we look for evidence that we are right. I think this product is a winner. And look, these focus groups prove it.
Confirmation bias again.
The Bayesian approach flips that. It asks, if I were wrong about this, what evidence would I expect to see?
Ooh, that's a very sharp, very different question.
So if I believe this product is a winner, then the question becomes, if I were wrong, I would expect to see very low engagement on the teaser website we launched. Okay, let's go look at the engagement data on the teaser website. It forces you to actively hunt for the evidence that would change your mind.
It flips the searchlight. Instead of shining it on what you want to see, you shine it on what you're afraid to see.
Precisely. Now, pillar 3, dynamics. This is about the culture of the room itself. How do we behave? And here, we have to talk about Jeff Bezos and the silent meeting.
I am fascinated by this. I've heard about it, but it sounds so awkward. Walk us through the physics of a silent meeting at Amazon.
Okay. You walk into a conference room. There's no projector, no PowerPoint presentation, just a stack of papers on the table. It's a 6-page memo written in narrative prose.
Like a well-structured essay.
Exactly, like an essay. The meeting starts. The leader says, okay, let's read. And for the next 20 or 30 minutes, there's total silence. Everyone sits there and reads the document, scribbling notes in the margins.
30 minutes of silence in a corporate meeting, that must feel like an eternity.
It creates a completely different dynamic. First, it kills the performance art of a presentation. We've all seen the charismatic executive who has terrible data but great slides and a booming voice. He wins the room with style.
The Steve Jobs wannabe.
Right. In a written memo, you can't hide weak logic with a fancy slide transition. If the argument doesn't hold water, it's glaringly obvious on page 3. It levels the playing field for the quiet, thoughtful people who might not be great public speakers, but have brilliant ideas.
And it ensures everyone is actually prepared. There's no faking it.
Exactly. No more bluffing where people pretend they read the pre-read while they're actually checking email under the table. Everyone's literally on the same page. When the discussion finally starts, it begins at a much higher level of intelligence because everyone has processed the information.
Another dynamic Sibony mentions is the distinction between a mistake and a failure. This is the right to fail.
This is so critical for any company that wants to innovate. Most companies punish bad outcomes. If you launch a product and it flops, you get fired or demoted or your bonus gets cut.
Which teaches everyone to never, ever take a risk.
Right. Sibony says you must distinguish. A mistake is when you didn't follow the process. You didn't do the pre-mortem. You ignored the data from the 6 amigos. You were sloppy. That should have consequences.
Okay, that's fair.
A failure, on the other hand, is when you followed the process perfectly. You did the research, you ran the numbers, you stress-tested the idea, you made a smart, well-reasoned bet, and it didn't work out. Maybe a pandemic hit. Maybe a competitor did something crazy and unpredictable. That is bad luck. That should not be punished.
In fact, it should almost be celebrated as a good bet that didn't pay off.
Yes. The message should be, we made a good decision that had a bad outcome. If you can build a culture that recognizes that distinction, you unlock innovation. You become fearless.
There is one last tactic in dynamics that I love, the Texas sharpshooter strategy.
This refers to the old joke about a cowboy who shoots a bunch of random holes in the side of a barn and then goes and paints targets around the bullet holes to claim he's a master sharpshooter.
And in business, this is about announcing your strategy way too early.
Leaders love to announce big, bold plans. We are going to be the undisputed leader in AI by 2027. The problem is, once you announce that target, you are locked in. You suffer from massive confirmation bias. You ignore all the evidence that AI might be a bubble or that your customers don't actually want it.
You painted the target before you took the shot.
Sibony advises, keep your options open as long as possible. Don't commit to a single narrative until you absolutely have to. Be flexible. Experiment. Don't paint the target until the bullet has already landed.
So putting this all together, we have the pre-mortem, the vanishing options test, the 6 amigos, silent meetings, the anti-portfolio. This is a whole system.
It is a decision factory. That is the ultimate metaphor of the book, and it's a powerful one.
Explain that. What does that mean?
Think about a car factory. Toyota doesn't just hire smart workers and hope that they build good cars. They engineer the assembly line. They have quality checks at every single station. They have rigorous protocols. If a defect happens, they stop the entire line and fix the process so it never happens again.
Most companies don't treat their decision-making like that.
Not even close. They treat decisions like art. Let's get a bunch of smart people in a room and hope magic happens. That is not a factory. That is an improv studio, Sibony is saying. Build the factory. Engineer the process. Because you cannot control the outcome, luck always gets a vote.
You can do everything right and still fail because of bad luck.
Exactly. Sibony brings up Paul the Octopus, who correctly predicted 8 World Cup matches in a row. He was just an octopus. He got lucky. Do not confuse luck with genius. But if you have a bad process, if your factory is broken, you might get lucky once in a while, but eventually the math will crush you.
A bad process guarantees long-term failure. A good process gives you the best possible fighting chance.
That is the best we can hope for in a chaotic, low-validity world.
This has been, frankly, a little anxiety-inducing, but also incredibly empowering. It shifts the focus from, I need to be a genius, to, I need to build a better system.
Be the architect, not the oracle. That's the takeaway.
Correct. So I want to leave you, our listener, with something to do tomorrow morning. When you walk into that conference room for that big decision, look around.
Ask yourself, are we fact-checking or are we just story-checking? Are we looking for truth or just for confirmation?
Ask yourself, have we done a pre-mortem? Have we taken 5 minutes to write the history of our failure?
And ask yourself, is the silence in this room a sign of genuine agreement? Or is it just an information cascade waiting to happen, with everyone too scared to speak up?
Don't just make the decision. Take a step back and decide how you are going to decide.
Build the architecture.
Let's go to work.